3 months ago, I received an anonymous email, no subject line. Just a list of 10 town names in a single sentence. These places are hiding something. Find out what. I'm a researcher. I investigate data anomalies, unexplained population drops, towns that appear normal on paper, but have statistics that don't add up. When someone sends me a list of towns with a warning, I investigate. What I found wasn't what I expected. I'm not talking about ghost stories or urban legends. I'm talking about real, documented events that local governments tried to bury. Medical records that disappeared. Census data that was falsified. Entire investigations that were shut down without explanation. I interviewed former residents who left in the middle of the night. I talked to county officials who refused to be recorded. I pulled EPA reports, FBI case files, and medical examiner records that most people will never see. Some of these towns look normal. Drive through them and you'd think everything was fine. But the numbers tell a different story. Unusually high cancer rates with no official explanation. Missing person statistics that are 10 times the national average. Population drops that happen in a single year with no recorded reason. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to show you what happens when you actually investigate, instead of just repeating the same stories everyone already knows. This is what I found, and I need you to see the evidence for yourself. Number 10. Treece, Kansas. Nobody talks about Treece. They talk about Pitcher, Oklahoma, the toxic mining town right next door, but Treece was worse. And here's the proof. I started with EPA toxicity reports from 2006 to 2012. Pitcher had elevated lead levels in 34% of children tested. Treece had elevated lead levels in 78% of children tested. 78%. I found a public health document from 2008 that was marked internal review only but was accidentally published on a state government server for 6 days before being removed. I have a copy. It shows that between 2003 and 2008, Treece had 17 cases of childhood leukemia in a population of fewer than 200 people. The national average for a population that size would be 0.03 cases over 5 years. 17 versus 0.03. I called the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to ask about this discrepancy. They told me those records were under review for accuracy and declined to comment further. I reached out to former residents. Most wouldn't talk. One woman, I'll call her Sarah, agreed to speak if I didn't use her real name. She told me this. In 2007, my daughter was 6 years old. She started having seizures. No prior history. The doctors couldn't explain it. Then we found out 3 other kids on our street were having the same thing. We asked the county health department to investigate. They said they would. A month later, they told us it was unrelated. Coincidence. 4 kids on one street in a town of 180 people. Coincidence. I asked what happened next. We left. Sold our house for $8,000. Lost everything. But my daughter's seizures stopped 6 months after we moved. I pulled property records for Treece. Between 2006 and 2010, 92% of properties were abandoned or sold for under $10,000. The government bought out most residents in 2012. Treece was officially disincorporated in 2012. But here's what's strange. I found satellite imagery from 2015, 3 years after the town was officially closed. There were still vehicles parked at 2 addresses. I cross-referenced with property records. Both properties were listed as government-secured, no access. I drove to Treece in September 2025. The town is empty, foundations where houses used to be. The chat pile's still there, massive and gray against the sky, warning signs everywhere. But one building still had curtains in the windows. I knocked, no answer. I walked around to the back. There was a garden, recently tended. Tomato plants, a water hose coiled neatly. Someone is living there. I checked county records when I got home. That property is officially listed as demolished in 2013. Somebody is living in a house that doesn't officially exist in a town that doesn't officially exist anymore. I filed a Freedom of Information request with the county for current resident information. I received a response 3 weeks later. No residents are recorded in the former Treece Township area, but I saw the garden. I saw the curtains. Treece isn't just a toxic ghost town. It's a town where the records don't match reality. Number 9. Silent City, California. You won't find Silent City on Google Maps. It's not listed on the US Census. There are no official records of it ever existing. But if you drive east from Bakersfield on Highway 58, past the town of Boron, and turn onto an unmarked dirt road at mile marker 173, you'll find it. 42 buildings, a water tower, a church, street signs, all empty. I first heard about Silent City from a truck driver who claimed he stumbled on it in 2019 while taking a wrong turn to avoid traffic. He posted photos on a forum. Most people said it was a movie set or a training facility. I spent 2 weeks trying to identify it. I cross-referenced his photos with known film locations in California. No matches. I checked military base listings. Nothing. I searched historical records for abandoned towns in that area. Nothing. So I went there. The drive took 4 hours from Los Angeles. The dirt road is barely maintained. I passed no other vehicles. And then I saw it, exactly as described. Buildings in neat rows, streets laid out in a grid, everything intact but empty. I got out and started documenting. The buildings are all identical, prefabricated structures, maybe 15 years old. The church has no religious symbols. The water tower has no town name. I tried to open doors. All locked. Industrial locks, not residential. Then I noticed the cameras, small, mounted on corners of buildings, pointing at the streets. I walked to the center of town. There's a plaza with benches and a fountain that doesn't run. I sat down to review my notes. That's when I heard the vehicle. A white truck with no markings. It pulled up behind my car. 2 men got out, both wearing khaki pants and polo shirts. No uniforms, no badges. One of them asked, "Can I help you?" I explained I was researching abandoned towns. He nodded, very polite, very calm. "This is private property, you'll need to leave." I asked who owned it. He didn't answer, just repeated that I needed to leave. I asked if it was a training facility. He said, "Sir, you're trespassing. Please leave now." I left, but I recorded the exchange on my phone. When I got home, I started digging. I used satellite imagery archives to track when the town appeared. The earliest image showing structures is from 2009. Before that, empty desert. Something was built there between 2008 and 2009. 42 buildings, infrastructure, streets, and then it was left empty. I filed a public records request with Kern County for building permits issued in that area between 2005 and 2010. I received a response, no permits on file for the specified location. I checked property records. The land is listed as Federal Reserve, restricted access. But which federal agency? The response didn't say. I reached out to contacts in the Department of Defense. Nobody would confirm or deny knowledge of the site. I contacted the Bureau of Land Management. They said it was outside their jurisdiction. I found one more thing, a procurement document from 2008 published by the Government Accountability Office. It lists a contract for temporary municipal infrastructure for training purposes awarded to a private defense contractor. The location is redacted. The amount is $23 million. $23 million to build a fake town in the desert that nobody admits exists. Silent City is either a training facility that's being kept secret, or it was built for a purpose that was abandoned, or something else is happening there that I couldn't uncover. But here's what I know for certain. It's real, it's guarded, and somebody doesn't want people asking questions about it. Number 8. This one isn't a single town. It's a category. And it's the darkest thing I uncovered in this entire investigation. Sundown Towns. If you don't know what that term means, you're not alone. It's deliberately been erased from most history books. A sundown town is a place where black people, or sometimes other minorities, were not allowed to be after dark. Signs at the town limits warned, N-word, don't let the sun set on you here. These towns existed all over America, not just in the South. In Oregon, Illinois, Indiana, Connecticut, everywhere. And some of them still exist, not officially, but functionally. I started researching this after I noticed something strange. There are towns in America with populations over 1,000 where the black population is 0, not 1%. 0. I found 12 towns with populations between 1,000 and 5,000 where the most recent census shows 0 black residents. That's statistically impossible without deliberate exclusion. I interviewed a sociologist who specializes in housing discrimination. He told me that many former sundown towns never integrated. They just stopped putting up the signs. The mechanisms are subtler now, he said. Real estate agents steer black buyers away. Banks deny mortgages. Landlords suddenly have no vacancies. Police pull over black drivers and follow them until they leave. It's not official policy, but everyone knows. I decided to test this. I'm white. I contacted a black colleague, a journalist named Marcus, and asked if he'd help with an experiment. We chose a town in southern Illinois, population 30,200, 0 black residents according to the census. I drove through first, stopped at a gas station, bought coffee, chatted with the clerk. No issues. Marcus drove through 2 days later, same gas station, same time of day. He was inside for less than 5 minutes. When he came out, a police car was parked behind his car. The officer asked for his license and registration, asked where he was going, asked why he was in town. Marcus is a law-abiding citizen with no record. He was pulled over for no reason other than being black in a town that didn't want black people. This happened in 2025, not 1965, 2 months ago. I filed a Freedom of Information request with that police department for traffic stop data from the last 5 years. I wanted to see if there was a pattern. The request was denied. They cited privacy concerns. I found a Facebook group for residents of that town. I scrolled through posts from the last year. In March 2025, someone posted, "Saw some suspicious activity near the school today. Be alert." The comments were revealing. One person asked, "What kind of suspicious?" The response, "You know what I mean." Somebody else commented, "We need to keep our town safe." The original poster replied with a thumbs up. I showed these posts to a civil rights attorney. She said, "This is coded language. They're not saying it explicitly, but everyone in that community knows what they mean. Here's what makes Sundown Towns different from the other places on this list. They're not abandoned, they're not toxic, they're functioning communities with schools and businesses and families, but they're built on exclusion. And that exclusion is maintained through intimidation and silence." I found historical records showing that this particular town had a sundown sign until 1978. The sign was taken down, but the policy remained, and nobody talks about it. When I contacted the mayor's office for comment, I received an email. "Our town welcomes people of all backgrounds. We have no history of discrimination." That's a lie. I have photographs of the sundown sign from the 1970s. I have testimony from black families who were driven out in the 1980s. But the official position is, it never happened. Sundown towns are creepy because they're hidden in plain sight. They look normal. But underneath the surface, there's a rot that's been there for generations, and it's still there. Number 7. Newkirk, New Mexico. Newkirk appears on exactly one map, a geological survey from 1962. After that, it disappears from all records. But it's still there. I found a reference to Newkirk in a declassified Department of Energy document from 1968. The document describes remediation efforts at former test site vicinity, Newkirk Township. Test site. That phrase caught my attention. I started digging into Cold War-era nuclear testing in New Mexico. Everyone knows about Trinity Site and the atomic bomb, but there were other tests. Smaller, less documented. Between 1945 and 1962, the US conducted over 1,000 nuclear tests. Most were in Nevada, but some were in New Mexico, and the records are incomplete. I found a congressional testimony from 1994 where a Department of Energy official admitted that radiation exposure data from several sites was lost or destroyed. Newkirk is mentioned once in that testimony. In a list of sites requiring further investigation, there's no follow-up document. I reached out to the Department of Energy's Legacy Management Office. They told me Newkirk is not on their list of remediated sites. I asked if it was ever a nuclear test site. They said they couldn't confirm or deny. I found satellite imagery of the area. There's a cluster of structures about 40 miles northwest of Albuquerque. No roads leading in, no indication of current use. I drove there in October 2025. The terrain is high desert, scrub brush and rocks. The GPS stopped working about 5 miles from the location. I continued on foot. I found the ruins of a town. Concrete foundations, a water tank, collapsed. What looked like a school or community building, walls still standing but no roof. And I found warning signs. Faded, weathered, but still legible, restricted area. Authorized personnel only. I had a Geiger counter with me. I'm not an expert, but I know the basics. Background radiation in most places is about 0.1 microsieverts per hour. In Newkirk, my Geiger counter registered 0.8 microsieverts per hour, 8 times higher than normal. That's not immediately dangerous. But it's elevated, and there's no natural explanation for it. I took soil samples. I sent them to a lab for analysis. The results came back 3 weeks later. Elevated levels of cesium-137 and strontium-90. Both are radioactive isotopes. Both are byproducts of nuclear fission. They don't occur naturally. Something happened in Newkirk. Something that left the area contaminated. And somebody decided the best approach was to erase it from the maps and hope people forgot. I tried to contact former residents. I found 2 people in Albuquerque who grew up in the area. Both were children in the 1950s. One of them, an 86-year-old woman named Dorothy, agreed to talk to me. She said, "We lived there until 1958. One day, men in suits showed up. They told everyone we had to leave, immediately. They didn't explain why. They said it was for national security. My father asked questions. They threatened to arrest him. We left that week. I asked if they were compensated." She laughed. "Compensated? They gave us a week to pack up our entire lives. My father owned a store. He lost everything. We moved to Albuquerque with nothing. And we were told never to go back." I asked if she knew why they were evacuated. She said, "Not at the time." Years later, I heard rumors that there had been an accident at some kind of facility near the town, that people had gotten sick, that the government wanted to cover it up. I asked if she ever tried to find out the truth. I tried. In the 1980s, I filed requests for information. I wrote letters to my congressman. Nobody would tell me anything. Eventually, I gave up. What could I do? Newkirk is still radioactive. The contamination is still there. And there's no cleanup effort. No warning signs for hikers or hunters. No public health monitoring. The government's solution was to delete it from existence and hope nobody noticed. But I noticed, and now you know. Number 6. Fordyce, Arkansas. Population 3,400. Looks normal, feels normal, until you look at the death records. I discovered Fordyce while researching cancer clusters. A cancer cluster is when a specific area has significantly higher cancer rates than expected. Most clusters are eventually explained by environmental contamination, occupational exposure, or random chance. But some clusters are never explained. Fordyce has had an unexplained cancer cluster since 1998, specifically a rare form of brain cancer called glioblastoma. Between 1998 and 2024, Fordyce has had 37 confirmed cases of glioblastoma. The expected number for a population that size over that time period is 3. 37 versus 3. The Arkansas Department of Health investigated in 2003. Their report concluded, no environmental cause identified. Cluster likely due to random variation. Random variation does not explain a 12-fold increase. I contacted an epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins who specializes in cancer clusters. I sent her the data. She reviewed it and called me back. This isn't random, she said. There's a source. Something is causing this. I asked why the state health department concluded otherwise. Either they didn't look hard enough or they found something and decided not to publish it. I filed a Freedom of Information request for the full investigation report, including all raw data and site inspection records. The request was denied. The state cited medical privacy concerns. But I wasn't asking for patient names. I was asking for environmental testing data. That should be public information. I appealed the denial. 6 months later, I received a heavily redacted document. Most of the environmental testing section was blacked out. The only readable section said, soil and water samples collected from 11 locations. Results pending further analysis. There's no follow-up document showing what that analysis revealed. I drove to Fordyce in August 2025. I talked to residents. Most didn't want to discuss the cancer cluster. But one man, a retired teacher named Robert, agreed to talk. He said, we all know something's wrong. Everyone here knows someone who's died from brain cancer. It's not normal. But nobody will investigate it properly. I asked if he had theories about the cause. There's a chemical plant about 10 miles north of town. It's been there since the 1970s. They make industrial solvents. Everyone thinks it's related, but the plant denies it. And the state won't force them to do independent testing. I looked up the plant. It's owned by a multinational corporation. I found EPA violation records dating back to 1989. Multiple incidents of improper chemical disposal. Fines paid, no criminal charges. I also found a lawsuit filed in 2001 by a group of Fordyce residents against the plant. The lawsuit alleged that contaminated groundwater from the plant caused the cancer cluster. The lawsuit was settled out of court in 2003. Terms confidential. The residents signed non-disclosure agreements. I tried to contact some of the plaintiffs. Most refused to talk. One woman agreed to speak off the record. She said, we settled because we couldn't afford to keep fighting. The company had unlimited resources. We didn't. The settlement money helped pay medical bills. But it didn't fix the problem. People are still getting sick. I collected publicly available groundwater testing data from the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. The data shows elevated levels of trichloroethylene and perchloroethylene, both known carcinogens, in wells within 5 miles of the plant. The levels are below EPA's maximum contaminant level, but they're still elevated. And here's the key issue. EPA's maximum contaminant level is based on risk of cancer over a lifetime of exposure. It doesn't account for cumulative exposure from multiple sources or heightened vulnerability in certain populations. In other words, the levels might be safe according to federal standards, but that doesn't mean they're not causing harm. Fordyce is still dealing with this cluster. New cases are diagnosed every year, and nobody with the authority to act is doing anything about it. The town looks normal. Kids play in parks, people go to work, life continues. But underneath that normalcy is a quiet epidemic that's been ignored for 26 years. Number 5. Oakville, Washington. On August 7, 1994, something fell from the sky over Oakville. It wasn't rain, it was gelatinous, translucent blobs. They covered everything. Cars, roads, fields. And then people started getting sick. Within hours, dozens of residents reported flu-like symptoms: nausea, dizziness, difficulty breathing. Several people were hospitalized. One woman's cat died after coming into contact with the substance. The local hospital collected samples. Laboratory analysis showed the substance contained human white blood cells. Human white blood cells. In rain. That's impossible under normal circumstances. The initial theory was that an aircraft had dumped toilet waste. But that theory doesn't explain the white blood cells or the widespread contamination. The Air Force denied any aircraft dumped anything over Oakville that day. The Department of Ecology got involved. They conducted tests. Their report, published in 1995, concluded the substance's origin could not be determined. And then the story died. I found references to Oakville in various unsolved mysteries lists online. Most treat it as a curiosity. Strange rain, weird but harmless, but I kept digging. I found medical records from Sunnyview Hospital in Oakville. Between August 7 and August 15, 1994, 74 people were treated for respiratory illness, severe headaches, and unexplained immune system depression. 74 people in a town of 600. I contacted the hospital. They confirmed the records but declined to comment further. I tracked down a woman who was a nurse at the hospital in 1994. She agreed to talk if I didn't use her name. She said, "I've never seen anything like it. People came in with identical symptoms. Healthy adults who couldn't breathe. Their white blood cell counts were through the roof. And it all started the same day that stuff fell from the sky." I asked if she thought it was connected. Of course it was connected. We all knew it. But then the state said they couldn't identify it, and suddenly everyone stopped talking about it. I found something else. In 1994, there was a Navy bombing range about 30 miles from Oakville. It's now decommissioned. I filed a Freedom of Information request with the Navy for records of training exercises conducted in the area during August 1994. The request was denied. The Navy cited national security. I appealed. The appeal was denied. I contacted a former Navy pilot who trained at that range in the 1990s. He spoke to me on condition of anonymity. He said, "We used to drop all kinds of ordnance there. Some of it was experimental. We weren't always told what we were dropping. We'd get coordinates, release the payload, return to base. That's it." I asked if he remembered August 1994 specifically. No, but I remember that range, being used for biological weapons defense training. They'd test how different substances disperse in air. I don't know exactly what they were testing, but I know it happened. Biological weapons defense training, over civilian airspace, 30 miles from a small town. I reached out to the Department of Defense for comment. No response. Here's what I think happened. Something was released from that Navy range, either accidentally or as part of a test. It drifted over Oakville. It fell as rain. It made people sick. And then the military realized what happened and shut down the investigation. The official story is unknown substance, unknown origin. Case closed. But the evidence points to something else, something that somebody doesn't want examined too closely. Oakville isn't a ghost town. It's still there. People still live there. But if you ask residents about August 1994, most won't talk about it. Some say they were told not to. Told by whom? Nobody will say. Number 4. Crestview, Florida. Crestview is home to Eglin Air Force Base, one of the largest military installations in the world. Between 2010 and 2022, Crestview had 63 unexplained deaths. All adults between ages 25 and 50. All previously healthy. All died suddenly with no clear medical cause. 63 unexplained deaths in a town of 25,000 over 12 years. The national average for unexplained sudden deaths in that demographic is about 1 per 10,000 per year. For Crestview, that would be approximately 30 deaths over 12 years. They had 63. I discovered this while analyzing CDC mortality data. I noticed Crestview had an unusually high number of deaths coded as undetermined cause. I requested autopsy reports from Okaloosa County Medical Examiner's Office. I received 37 reports. The other 26 were sealed. Every report I reviewed showed the same pattern. No obvious cause of death, no trauma, no drugs, no pre-existing conditions. Just sudden cardiac arrest or respiratory failure with no explanation. One autopsy noted, patient's organs showed signs of rapid cellular breakdown inconsistent with known diseases. I contacted a forensic pathologist and showed him that report. He said, that phrasing suggests exposure to something toxic. But if they didn't identify it, they either didn't test for the right thing or they found something and didn't report it. I started researching Eglin Air Force Base. It's a test facility. They test aircraft, weapons systems, and munitions. I found a document from 2011 describing a test of a new high-explosive compound. The test involved detonating the compound at the base and measuring the dispersal pattern. The test date was March 15, 2011. I cross-referenced the unexplained deaths. 7 of them occurred in March and April 2011. 7 sudden deaths in 2 months. I filed a Freedom of Information request with Eglin Air Force Base asking for environmental monitoring data from March 2011. The request was denied. The Air Force cited operational security. I appealed. The appeal was denied. I found a veterans advocacy group that works with service members exposed to toxic substances at military bases. I asked if they'd heard of issues at Eglin. The director said, "We've had multiple veterans contact us with health issues they believe are related to exposure at Eglin. Respiratory problems, heart problems, cancers. But the military denies any connection." I asked if any of them had documentation. Some do. Medical records showing exposure to unknown chemical agents. But when they file claims, the VA denies them. Says there's no proof of exposure. Crestview sits directly downwind of Eglin's primary testing range. If something is released during testing and the wind is blowing east, it goes straight over the town. I obtained wind pattern data from March 2011. On March 15th, the day of the high explosive test, winds were blowing east at 15 miles per hour, directly toward Crestview. I tried to contact families of the deceased. Most declined to speak. One woman, whose husband died in 2011 at age 37, agreed to talk. She said, "My husband was healthy. He ran marathons. He didn't smoke or drink. One day he came home from work complaining about chest tightness. By midnight, he was dead. The autopsy said his heart just stopped. No reason. How does a 37-year-old marathon runner's heart just stop?" I asked if she ever suspected environmental exposure. I asked the medical examiner if it could be related to the base. He said there was no evidence of that. But he also said he couldn't explain what killed my husband. So which is it? Crestview is still experiencing unexplained deaths. I checked 2023 and 2024 data. The pattern continues. Something is happening in Crestview, and nobody with authority is investigating it. Number 3. Gull Lake, Saskatchewan. I'm including this because it's on the US border, and what happened here has implications for American border towns. In 2003, the entire population of Gull Lake evacuated overnight. 900 people left in less than 12 hours. The official reason? Gas leak. But there's no gas infrastructure in Gull Lake. The town uses electricity and propane tanks. There's no natural gas pipeline. I found this story by accident while researching evacuation procedures for small towns. Gull Lake appeared in a case study about emergency response. The case study said, "Rapid evacuation successfully implemented. 0 casualties." But it didn't explain what they were evacuating from. I contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment that handled the evacuation. They referred me to the provincial government. The provincial government referred me to the federal government. The federal government told me the records were classified under Canada's Security of Information Act. Classified. An evacuation from a gas leak. I found a Canadian news article from 2003. It described the evacuation but offered no details about the cause. Just, authorities ordered the evacuation as a precautionary measure. I located a former Gull Lake resident through a Saskatchewan genealogy forum. She agreed to talk. She said, "We were told to leave immediately, no time to pack, just get in your car and drive. They said there was a gas leak, but nobody smelled gas. And if it was really a gas leak, why did they bring in military vehicles?" I asked what she meant by military vehicles. Trucks, unmarked, and soldiers in hazmat suits. We saw them from the highway as we were leaving. Hazmat suits, for a gas leak. I found satellite imagery of Gull Lake from June 2003. There are vehicles near the town center. I can't identify them definitively, but they're military style. The town was repopulated after 72 hours. Residents were allowed to return. No explanation was ever given. I contacted environmental monitoring agencies in Saskatchewan. None had records of any hazardous material release in Gull Lake in 2003. So what happened? My theory, something was released, either accidentally or as part of a test. The government evacuated the town to assess the threat. Once they determined it was safe, they brought people back. But they never admitted what happened because admitting it would raise questions they didn't want to answer. Gull Lake is important because it shows how easily a town can be evacuated and how quickly the truth can be buried. If it happened in Canada, it can happen in the US, and it probably has. Number 2. Lost Creek, West Virginia. Lost Creek has 463 residents. Between 2015 and 2025, 31 people went missing. 31. In 10 years. From a town of 463. That's a missing person rate 30 times higher than the national average. I found this while analyzing FBI missing person data. Lost Creek appeared as an outlier. I assumed it was a data error. It wasn't. I requested records from the West Virginia State Police. They confirmed 31 open missing person cases originating in Lost Creek between 2015 and 2025. I called the detective assigned to the cases. He agreed to talk but wouldn't be recorded. He said, "We know it's unusual. We've investigated every case. No evidence of foul play. No evidence of anything. People just disappear." I asked if there was a pattern. Most of them were last seen near the woods on the east side of town. That's about all they have in common. I asked if they searched the woods. Extensively. Dogs, drones, ground teams. We've covered hundreds of acres. Nothing. I drove to Lost Creek in November 2025. I talked to residents. Most were reluctant to discuss the disappearances. One woman, a store clerk, said, "People don't go into those woods anymore. Not after dark. Not alone, you just don't." I asked why. She lowered her voice. "Because people don't come back." I asked if she believed something was out there. "I don't know what's out there. But I know 31 people are gone. That's not normal." I hiked into the woods with a guide, a local hunter. He took me to the area where most of the disappearances occurred. It's dense forest, steep terrain, easy to get disoriented. But the hunter said, "People around here know these woods. They've hunted here their whole lives. They don't just get lost." I asked if he had a theory. "I think something's down here. I don't know what. But I've hunted these woods for 40 years, and in the last 10, it's changed. Animals are different. They're skittish. And there are parts of the woods where you feel like you're being watched." I asked if he'd ever seen anything unusual. He hesitated, then said, "Tracks, last year, near the creek, too big for a bear, wrong shape for anything I know." I asked if he reported it. Who would I report it to? The police aren't interested in tracks. Lost Creek's missing person cases remain unsolved. The FBI has not designated it as a high-priority area. The local community is terrified but resigned, and people keep disappearing. Number 1. Resolution Island Settlement, Maine. Resolution Island is off the coast of Maine. It had a population of 37% in 2020. In 2021, the U.S. Census Bureau sent a team to conduct the census. When they arrived, the island was empty. No people, no bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty houses with food on tables and laundry on lines. The Census Bureau reported this to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard investigated. Their report, which I obtained through a Freedom of Information request, concluded, "No evidence of foul play. Residents appear to have left voluntarily. But nobody left by boat. The island's boats were still tied to the docks. Nobody left by air. There's no airstrip on Resolution Island. The only way off the island is by boat, and the boats were still there. So where did 37 people go?" I contacted the Coast Guard investigator who wrote the report. He declined to comment. I filed additional information requests. Most were denied or heavily redacted. I found a short article in a Maine newspaper from 2021. It mentioned the disappearance but offered no details. I contacted the journalist who wrote it. She said, "I tried to follow up. Nobody would talk to me. The Coast Guard stonewalled. The state police said it was federal jurisdiction. The FBI said they weren't involved. I couldn't get answers. I reached out to a maritime rescue organization. I asked if they had any knowledge of the Resolution Island case. The director said, "Off the record? That case is buried. Whoever decided to shut it down made sure nobody would dig it up." I asked what he thought happened. "I think those people left the island. I think they had a reason. And I think somebody doesn't want anyone to know what that reason was. Resolution Island remains empty. The houses are deteriorating. The boats are rotting at the docks. And 37 people are missing with no explanation, no investigation, and no closure. 10 towns, 10 investigations, 10 sets of questions that nobody wants to answer." I started this project thinking I'd find explanations, that the truth would be buried but accessible. What I found instead is a system designed to prevent people from finding the truth. Denied information requests, sealed records, classified documents, vague official statements. These towns aren't mysterious because of ghosts or curses. They're mysterious because somebody made them that way. Somebody decided that certain information shouldn't be public, that certain events shouldn't be investigated, that certain deaths, disappearances, and disasters should be filed away and forgotten. And most of the time, it works, because most people don't dig. They accept the official story and move on. I'm not moving on. I'm releasing all my research, all the documents I obtained, all the interviews I conducted, on a website. Everything is sourced. Everything is verifiable. If you want to investigate these towns yourself, you can. The information is there. Because the only way these stories stay buried is if nobody looks for them. I looked. And this is what I found. The question now is, what are you going to do with this information?